Maya Richardson had been running on fumes for 18 months. A single mother of two, working triple shifts at St. Catherine's Hospital, she'd watched the foreclosure notice arrive on a Tuesday morning like a death warrant. The bank gave her 60 days. She had $47,000 missing from her future. Every penny she earned disappeared into rent, medications for her eldest son's asthma, and the mounting legal fees of a custody battle she couldn't afford to lose. The system wasn't broken. It was designed to break people like her. Then a motorcycle pulled into her driveway at dawn. Not one, 37 of them. The AFFA crew, Angels for Forgotten Families, riders who'd been watching her story circulate through the hospital network, whispered about in break rooms by nurses who knew her sacrifice. They knew about the shifts she pulled while her kids slept in a neighbor's house. They knew about the eviction notice taped to her door. And they knew something else. Promises made to protect those without protection need to be kept, no matter the cost. What started as a single rider's quiet act of mercy became a movement. By sunset, an envelope with her name written in careful script sat on her kitchen table. The words "Paid in Full" were stamped across it in gold ink. But the real story, the one that would echo through her life and the lives of everyone she loved, began the moment she opened that door and understood that sometimes salvation arrives on chrome and thunder, spoken in the language of honor that the powerful pretend doesn't exist. The fluorescent lights of St. Catherine's Hospital hummed their mechanical prayer at 11:47 p.m. Maya Richardson moved through the corridors like a ghost made of bone and determination, her scrubs wrinkled from a 14-hour shift that wasn't supposed to end until dawn. Her feet ached in ways that medicine couldn't touch. Her lower back screamed with a dull, grinding pain that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat. Room 412. Mrs. Chen was awake again, gripping the bed rail with trembling fingers. Maya approached with the practiced gentleness of someone who'd learned that pain steals dignity first, then everything else. She adjusted the IV line, checked the monitors, and sat on the edge of the bed. Something the hospital manual said not to do, but something every good nurse did anyway. "Can't sleep?" Maya asked, her voice soft as cotton. Mrs. Chen shook her head. "Thinking about my granddaughter. She's starting college next month. I won't be there to see it." Maya squeezed her hand. She understood the weight of that sentence. Her own mother had died when Jaden was 3. She'd missed so many moments. First day of school, 10th birthday, his first time riding a bike. Death was a thief that way. But so was poverty. So was the system that decided some people deserved rest and others deserved only exhaustion. The shift supervisor appeared at the door with a tablet. "Richardson, you're needed in the ER. Car accident, multiple injuries. Can you stay?" Maya had worked 18 hours already. Her feet were blistered. She hadn't eaten since 6 a.m. Her son Jaden was asleep at Mrs. Martinez's apartment 2 blocks away, and tomorrow she had to be at the bank at 9 a.m. to hear them explain again why her life was no longer her own. "I'll be right there," she said, "because that's what you did. That's what people like her had always done. You stayed. You showed up. You carried other people's emergencies on your shoulders while your own house burned down around you." The ER was chaos, organized chaos, the kind that happens when trained people meet disaster head-on. A sedan had collided with a delivery truck on Interstate 94. 3 patients, a father with a compound fracture, a teenager with a concussion, and a woman with internal bleeding that needed emergency surgery. Maya moved between them like a dancer who'd memorized every step, drawing blood, starting IVs, holding hands, speaking the language of hope to people drowning in fear. At 3:22 a.m., as she was restocking the supply cart, her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Don't lose your home. Help is coming. AFFA." She stared at the message for 5 seconds, then deleted it. Some kind of scam, some kind of cruel joke. She'd learned not to believe in miracles. By 6:47 a.m., when she clocked out, Maya had worked 23 hours in 36. Her body felt like it had been filleted. The drive home was a blur of red lights and muscle memory. She pulled into her driveway, and that's when she saw it. A white envelope on her doorstep, weighted down by a small stone. Her name was written on the front in bold, deliberate script. Maya. Maya's hands trembled as she picked up the envelope. It was thick, expensive paper, the kind that suggested either a lawsuit or a miracle, and she'd learned that both were equally dangerous. She looked up and down the street. Mrs. Martinez was watering her garden 2 houses down. The morning was ordinary, birds, traffic sounds, the smell of cut grass. Inside the envelope was a letter on matching stationery. "Maya, we are the angels for forgotten families. We ride because we believe in a simple truth. No one should lose their home while they're saving someone else's life. We know you've worked 847 shifts in the past 18 months. We know you haven't missed a single payment until now. We know your son has asthma and your daughter needs a safe place to sleep. We know the bank sent the letter. More importantly, we know that nurses like you are the backbone of this country, and we don't forget people like that. Your mortgage is paid in full. The legal fees for custody are handled. The back rent at Mrs. Martinez's apartment is settled. Consider it a debt repaid, not by us, but by a society that failed to protect you until now. You don't owe us anything, but if you ever need the AFFA, we'll be there. This is not charity. This is recognition. In solidarity, the AFFA crew." The letter fell from her hands. She read it again. Then a third time, her eyes scanning the words as if they might rearrange themselves into something rational, something she could process. $47,000. Gone. Erased. Impossible. There had to be a catch. There was always a catch. She opened her banking app with shaking fingers. The payment posted 12 hours ago. Mortgage payment, paid in full. Then another transaction. Legal services, paid, and another, rent assistance, paid. Maya sank onto her couch. The leather was worn, second-hand, paid for with 3 months of overtime. The walls were bare except for 2 crayon drawings her daughter had made at school. The kitchen refrigerator held 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, and a bottle of hot sauce. This apartment, this worn and tired space, was suddenly and impossibly still hers. She called her sister. "Tanya, something happened. I don't understand what." 20 minutes later, Tanya was at her door with coffee and confusion written across her face. They sat at the kitchen table reading the letter together, and for the first time in 18 months, Maya cried. Not from exhaustion or fear, but from something so foreign she almost didn't recognize it. Relief. "Who are the AFFA?" Tanya asked. "I don't know. I've never heard of them." But that wasn't entirely true. Whispers. Nurses' breakroom conversations. Stories about a motorcycle club that showed up for people. A woman in the ICU whose eviction was cancelled. A janitor whose son got into college with a scholarship no one could trace. a security guard whose medical debt vanished. The stories were urban legend, passed like prayers between shifts. Maya looked at the letter again, and something caught her eye. A small symbol embossed in the corner, a motorcycle, wings spread wide, surrounding initials, AFFA. She pulled up Google on her phone and searched. What she found was sparse. A few news articles from 5 years ago mentioning a group of bikers who'd organized community fundraising, a photo from a charity event showing men and women on motorcycles, faces obscured, standing with a group of homeless teenagers. No social media, no website, no way to contact them. They'd chosen her. They'd decided she was worth saving. The question that terrified her most was simple: why? And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The answer came at St. Catherine's that evening. Maya had gone back to work, not because she had to anymore, but because the work was part of her, woven into the fabric of who she was. She couldn't just stop. A single shift without her would mean less coverage, longer hours for her colleagues, one more person drowning in the system. So she clocked in at 7 p.m., even though her body screamed. The break room was different that day, quieter. People kept glancing at her, then looking away. By 8:15 p.m., her supervisor pulled her aside. "My office, now." This was it. The catch was coming. You didn't receive $47,000 without some consequence, some debt that would be collected in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But the supervisor's office had an extra chair. Sitting in it was a man in his mid-60s, skin weathered like an old map, a full grey beard, and patches on his jacket that read AFFA President. His name, he said, was Marcus Cole. "Sit down, Maya," her supervisor said gently. "This is Marcus. He wanted to speak with you privately." She sat. Every muscle tightened. Marcus smiled, a genuine smile, tired but warm. "I'm going to tell you why we chose you, and then I'm going to tell you what this means." He pulled out a folder with her name on it. 18 months ago, my granddaughter Zara was admitted to this hospital with acute leukemia. She was 9 years old. The doctors said 60% survival rate if we started treatment immediately. My daughter was a single mother, no insurance, no money. Sound familiar? Maya nodded slowly. Zara's treatment happened on this ward. The oncology team was excellent, but there was one nurse, you, Maya, who did something most people don't do. Every time you came to change Zara's IV, you sat with her, you told her stories, you painted her nails with the little bottle you kept in your locker. You sang to her during the hard nights. You never charged for any of it. You just cared, like she was your own. Marcus leaned forward. Zara is in remission now. She's healthy. She starts 5th grade next month. She's alive because of people like you. People who carry love into the darkest places. People who don't expect anything in return. He placed a photo on the desk. A young black girl with a huge smile, her head wrapped in a colorful scarf, holding a diploma from her hospital school program. The AFFA exists because some of us learned a long time ago that the people who save lives rarely get saved themselves. We're ex-military, some of us. We've been places where promises matter more than contracts. We've seen what happens when good people get broken by a system that doesn't value them. So we made a different kind of promise. We watch for people like you. We find them. And we make sure the world knows their worth. Maya couldn't speak. Your mortgage being paid isn't charity, Maya. It's recognition. It's us saying, we see you, we know what you do, and we're not going to let you disappear under the weight of other people's emergencies anymore. He stood to leave. One more thing. Zara wanted me to give you this. He placed an envelope in her hands. Inside was a card with a drawing of two figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a sun. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. Dear Miss Meyer, thank you for saving my life. You are a hero. Love, Zara Cole. Word spread through the AFFA like electricity through wire. By the following Saturday, Meyer's driveway had become the gathering place for something she hadn't understood until she witnessed it. A family that chose itself. 37 motorcycles arrived at dawn, their riders parking in careful lines along her street. Some neighbors peeked through curtains. Mrs. Martinez came out with her arms crossed, ready to defend her neighbor, and then simply stood there in amazement. The riders approached in no particular order, men and women of different ages, different backgrounds, all wearing the same patch on their jackets. Marcus introduced them one by one. There was Solomon, a former Marine medic, who'd lost his own daughter to a preventable illness and now channeled his grief into action. There was Christine, a retired firefighter, whose son had become addicted to opioids and died waiting for affordable treatment. There was James, a truck driver who'd watched his wife lose their home to medical debt and decided that no one else should suffer that way. There was Keisha, a former prosecutor who'd seen the system fail too many people and abandoned it to do real justice instead. They brought food. They brought tools. They brought paint and supplies. For 6 hours they painted Maya's house. They fixed the leaking kitchen faucet that had dripped for 2 years. They replaced the rotting boards on the back porch. They planted flowers in the front yard. Flowers the way a garden should look, not the way a foreclosure looks. Jaden and his sister watched from the front window, eyes wide with the kind of wonder that only children understand, the understanding that sometimes, unexpectedly, the world is generous. When it was done, Marcus found Maya sitting on her restored porch steps. "This is what we do," he said, sitting beside her. "Not just the money, the recognition, the showing up, the refusal to let people fall alone." "Why me?" she asked again. "Because you saved Zara. Because you saved hundreds of people through the years, and no one ever said thank you. Because we made a promise long ago that we wouldn't let that happen anymore. Because you're part of our family now, whether you want to be or not." He smiled. "Welcome to the AFFA, Maya." The following month brought a new weight, not the crushing weight of survival, but something else entirely, the weight of belonging to something larger than yourself. Maya started receiving calls from the other AFFA members. Solomon asked her to volunteer at a free health clinic in South Memphis on weekends. Christine invited her to meetings where the crew planned their next intervention. Keisha asked if she'd be willing to help a young black girl navigate the healthcare system after a violent incident. A girl who needed someone who understood trauma and also understood recovery. Maya said yes to all of it. But there was a price. Though not the kind she'd feared, the price was that she couldn't unsee the world anymore. She couldn't work her shifts at St. Catherine's without noticing every patient who was afraid, every person choosing between medication and rent. She couldn't pretend the system was anything other than what it was, a machine that ground up people like her, like the patients she served, like everyone who wasn't born into safety. One night, she was called to the ER for a man in his 50s, a construction worker with a compound fracture and no insurance. The doctors wanted to operate, but he refused because he didn't have the money. He'd rather let the fracture heal incorrectly, he said, than bankrupt his family. Maya sat with him while he cried. "I'm going to need help," she said. "Can I make a call?" She called Marcus. By the next morning, the surgery was approved. Not through charity, but through an organization the AFFA had quietly created, a legal entity that existed specifically to fight these battles, to negotiate with hospitals and insurance companies, to find the loopholes in a system designed to create loopholes for the poor. The man recovered. He went back to work. And somewhere in the file system of St. Catherine's Hospital, a debt was repaid. This was the real work of the AFFA, not the dramatic gestures, the quiet, relentless, day-by-day refusal to accept that some lives mattered less than others. But as Maya grew deeper into this world, she began to notice something else. The crew's meetings had an undertone, careful conversations about a particular case, a particular person. There was something they weren't telling her. Something they were still deciding about whether to trust her with. It came to a head on a Tuesday evening when Marcus asked her to come to a private meeting at the AFFA clubhouse. "There's something bigger," he said. "Something that goes beyond what you've seen. We need to know if you're ready." Maya looked at him. After 18 months of barely surviving, after a month of suddenly belonging, after watching the AFFA transform from urban legend to family, she knew the answer before he even asked the question. "Tell me," she said, "leave a comment if you believe nurses deserve better. And subscribe for the next chapter." The clubhouse sat on the edge of an industrial district in North Memphis. A 2-story brick building with no windows and a single sign, AFFA Repairs. The cover was legitimate. The AFFA did repair work, donated most of the profits to their operations. But the real work happened in the basement. Marcus led her down a narrow staircase lit by recessed lights. The basement was larger than the building above it, and what she saw there made her understand everything differently. There were filing cabinets, hundreds of them, computer stations, a wall covered with photographs, documents, and red thread, connecting them like a conspiracy board in a detective story. But this wasn't a story. This was a map of every intervention the AFFA had ever made. "We started 8 years ago," Marcus said quietly, "after my granddaughter's mother was denied coverage for a necessary medication. After I watched her choose between food and health. After I realized that the system wasn't failing. It was working exactly as designed. It was designed to break people." He walked her through the archive. This woman, eviction reversed. This man, medical debt forgiven. This child, accepted to a medical university with a full scholarship we funded. This family, saved from a predatory lender. This teenager, connected with a lawyer who fought his case pro bono because we made the introduction. This nurse, still alive because we intervened before the suicide attempt. Each file was a life. Each file was a person who'd been saved not by luck, but by a crew of bikers who'd decided that some debts couldn't be counted in dollars. "We don't break laws," Marcus continued. "We navigate them. We find every legal weapon available. We build cases. We create evidence. We connect people with lawyers, doctors, advocates who believe in something other than the bottom line. We negotiate with hospitals. We fight debt collectors. We pressure institutions in every way the system allows." He turned to face her. "But sometimes, Maya, the system won't allow it. Sometimes a woman is going to be trafficked. Sometimes a child is going to be in danger. Sometimes justice is going to be denied. And in those moments, we have to make a choice. Do we accept it, or do we become something different? Maya understood what he was saying without him saying it. "You've done more than help people," she said quietly. "Yes," Marcus replied, "not often, not carelessly, but yes. And we need to know if you can live with that knowledge." He showed her something else then, a box of letters, hundreds of them, thank you letters from people whose lives had been changed. But beneath them were other documents, hospital records, court documents, evidence of crimes prevented, abusers stopped, traffickers defeated. "We don't talk about this part," Marcus said, "not to everyone, not even to most of the crew. But the people we choose to tell, like you, we tell because we believe they understand what justice really means. That sometimes the system is so broken that playing by its rules means abandoning the people it's destroying." Maya looked at the letters, at the names, at the faces of people saved. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Your eyes," Marcus said. "You work in a hospital. You see things, bruises that don't match the story. Children who are afraid. Mothers with injuries that look like they came from more than a fall. We need nurses who are willing to report what they see, not to the system that will slow walk it into nothing, but to us. We'll investigate, we'll build cases, and we'll do whatever is necessary." He paused. "Sometimes that means something becomes an accident when it was actually a crime. Sometimes it means evidence disappears when it was collected illegally. Sometimes it means a prosecutor gets a phone call from a person they know. We work within every legal boundary we can, and when we can't, we accept the consequences." This was the real AFFA, not the motorcycles and the charity, the people who decided that the law and justice had become two different things, and had chosen justice. Maya thought of Mrs. Chen, her patient from weeks ago, who'd wondered if she'd live to see her granddaughter's college graduation. She thought of every patient who'd chosen suffering over financial ruin. She thought of Zara Cole, alive because someone had cared enough to see her as human. "I'm in," Maya said, and she meant it with every cell of her being. The first person Marcus brought to her was a woman named Deshawn, who'd arrived at St. Catherine's with injuries that didn't match her husband's story. She'd fallen down the stairs, he said, multiple times, because Deshawn was clumsy, apparently, because she was careless, because she deserved to be corrected. Maya had heard every version of this lie before. She'd treated it 100 times. But this time, she was supposed to do something different. She admitted Deshawn for observation, keeping her in the hospital longer than medically necessary. She documented everything carefully, photographically, with precision that went beyond standard care. She built a record so comprehensive that no one could deny what was happening. Then she called Marcus. What happened next occurred in the legal space between permission and justice. Deshawn was connected with a lawyer who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of case. The lawyer built a protection order so tight that her husband couldn't come within 1,000 yards of her. She was connected with a shelter program. She was given job training, childcare, and a path away from the cycle she'd been trapped in. Her husband was arrested when he violated the protection order. The case went to trial. He was convicted. Justice was served. The system for once had worked, but only because the AFFA had known how to make it work, had known how to document, navigate, and push in exactly the right ways. Deshawn sent Maya a letter. "I didn't believe anyone would help me. I didn't believe I was worth saving. Thank you for seeing me." Maya understood then what Marcus had meant. This wasn't about breaking laws. It was about recognizing that the law was designed by people who'd never been hungry, never been trapped, never been one medical emergency away from losing everything. It was about finding the cracks in that system and pushing people through to safety. She began to see patients differently, a child with cigarette burns, an elderly woman with handprints on her wrists, a teenager with the kind of fear in their eyes that came from living in a war zone that only they could see. Maya started documenting, started calling Marcus, started becoming part of a network that existed in the spaces between official and invisible. The cases piled up. Some were resolved through legal channels. Some required intervention that was legal but aggressive. Anonymous tips to authorities, evidence that appeared in the right place at the right time, connections made between people who needed each other. And some cases required something else entirely. Cases where the law had failed so completely that the only justice was the kind the AFFA provided in the dark hours of the night. 3 months into her work with the AFFA, Maya received a visitor at St. Catherine's who changed everything. A social worker she'd never met stopped her in the hallway. "You're the nurse who called about the Simmons family, right?" Maya nodded cautiously. "The father, Michael Simmons, died last night. Car accident. Head-on collision on Highway 51. Single vehicle. Investigators are saying it looked intentional, like he pulled directly into oncoming traffic." Maya's stomach dropped. She knew Michael Simmons. She'd been the one to document his abuse of his daughter. She'd been the one who reported it, and she'd been the one who knew that Marcus and the crew had gotten involved when the legal system moved too slowly. She didn't ask if Marcus had done it. She didn't need to. Instead, she understood something deeper and more terrifying: consequences. That evening, she met with Marcus alone. "You had him killed," she said. "I had a man removed from a position where he was destroying a child's life," Marcus replied. "The method isn't something I'm going to discuss with you, but I'm going to be honest about what you're part of now. This work has a price. Not always a legal price, sometimes a price paid in ways that can't be undone." Maya felt the weight of it then. She was no longer just a nurse providing information. She was part of a machine that operated outside law, outside morality, in a grey space where right and wrong had blurred beyond recognition. "I need to think," she said. "Take your time," Marcus replied. "But understand this: Michael Simmons was going to spend 1 to 2 years in prison if the case went to trial and conviction happened. His daughter was going to spend the rest of her life knowing her father was alive, that he might get out early on parole, that he might find her again. We chose a different equation. We chose permanent solution. And that solution was paid for by people who understand that sometimes the law protects the wrong people." He paused. "We don't ask members to do things they can't live with, Maya. If you can't be part of this, you can walk away and no one will blame you. But you can't unknow what you know now." Maya sat in silence for a long time. She thought about Zara Cole, alive because someone had cared. She thought about Deshawn, safe because someone had acted. She thought about every patient who'd been broken by a system designed to break them. She thought about her own children, and what world they would inherit if people like Marcus didn't exist to fight back. And she made her choice. "I'm staying," she said, "but I need to understand the rules. What are the lines we don't cross?" Marcus smiled sadly. "The lines are different for each person. For some people, the line is what's legal. For others, the line is what they can live with. You'll figure out where yours is, and we'll respect it." 6 months later, Maya stood in the hospital break room and looked at the wall where they'd started to post a quiet tradition. Cards from patients whose lives had been changed. Zara's card was there. "Thank you for helping Miss Maya save people." Deshawn's was there. "I'm going to college now. I'm going to be a counselor. I'm going to help other women like me." And a dozen others from people whose names couldn't be mentioned, whose stories couldn't be told, but whose lives had been permanently altered by a nurse who decided to see them as more than just medical cases. Jaden was in the 7th grade now, healthy, thriving, his asthma managed by consistent health care instead of emergency visits. His sister had been accepted to a magnet middle school. They lived in their house, really lived in it, with room to breathe, space to grow, futures that didn't look like survival. But the real change was internal. Maya understood now what the AFFA was really about. It wasn't the motorcycles or the money. It was the refusal to accept that the world had to be this way. It was the choice to intervene, to fight, to do whatever was necessary, within law or outside of it, to ensure that people like her weren't crushed under the weight of a system that had written them off as disposable. She'd learned Marcus's real philosophy one night when they were discussing a particularly difficult case. "The system is designed by people who've never been hungry," he'd said. "They don't understand what it means to have to choose. So they write laws as if choice was always available, as if everyone had options, as if poverty was a moral failing rather than a machine that creates it deliberately. Our job is to be the people who understand that justice sometimes means breaking rules that were written by the powerful to protect themselves." On a Thursday evening, Maya stood at her front door, the door that had been saved from foreclosure, and watched the AFFA crew pull into her driveway. They came regularly now, for meetings, for support, for the simple act of choosing family. 37 motorcycles, and tonight there were 3 new patches being handed out. 3 new nurses who'd been approached, who'd agreed to become the eyes and ears of a network that had decided the system needed remaking. Marcus approached her with a leather jacket. It was identical to his, to Christine's, to Solomon's. It had the AFFA patch, a motorcycle with wings spread wide. "You've earned this," he said, draping it over her shoulders. "What does it mean?" Maya asked. "It means you're one of us. It means when you call, we answer. It means when someone needs you, you show up. It means you're bound by a promise older than law, deeper than policy, stronger than any system. We protect our own." Jaden and his sister watched from the window, seeing their mother transformed into something larger than herself. Not a victim, not a survivor, a protector, a guardian, a person who decided that the world's cruelty wouldn't be the final word. As the crew shared food and stories in her backyard, Maya looked at their faces. People who'd learned that promises matter, that loyalty is sacred, that sometimes justice requires becoming something the system never intended. She thought about her first morning as an AFFA member, when she'd been handed an envelope marked "paid." She'd thought it was the end of something. Now she understood it had been the beginning of a life where she wasn't just surviving, the beginning of a family that had chosen her, the beginning of a fight that would never end, because the work of true justice never does. The motorcycles would ride on, through Memphis and beyond, carrying the message of the AFFA. "We see you, we remember you, we will not let you disappear." And somewhere in a hospital, a nurse would work her shift with new eyes, knowing that when she documented an injury, called a number, made a choice to speak for someone without a voice. She was part of something sacred. She was part of the AFFA, and the promise would last forever. Thank you for watching this extended conclusion. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more stories about loyalty, redemption, and the families we choose. Share this with someone who believes that good people come from everywhere, and that sometimes the best angels ride motorcycles.